Tom, thank you for sitting down with me again. You and I have had a lot of conversations since before you actually became border czar, and we're now about not quite 6 months in. Is this what you expected?
It's happening faster than I thought it would, especially securing the border. And look, we secured the border in 7 weeks. When I first got with the president after the election, I told him I expected 120 days minimum, but we did it quicker. And I think a lot of it has to do with President Trump's executive orders, which are game changers in themselves. Plus the men and women of the Border Patrol stepped up big time. And in 7 weeks, had the border crossing 96% down now. Right now, we got the most secure border in the history of this nation. And President Trump did that 4 months, what Joe Biden couldn't do or wouldn't do in 4 years. So it's very impressive.
And there are clearly repercussions for having had an open border for so long, but with stemming the influx of both drugs and people coming across the border, do you feel the difference in terms of what you and your agents are having to deal with?
So the idea always was, plug the hole in the boat rather than keep bailing water out. So we stopped the massive incoming. So now we got to concentrate on the millions that were released in this country under the Biden administration. Over 2 million gotaways, we don't know who they are, which concerns me the most. So now we got to deal with those that are here. And we're doing it in a smart way, a smart, effective way. We have been concentrating on public safety threats and national security threats. Numbers are good. ICE has already arrested over 100,000 on the interior. We prioritize the worst first. Well, it doesn't mean we forget everybody else, right? So we have 1.4 million illegal aliens who've had due process at great taxpayer expense and were ordered removed by judge and didn't leave. Those orders need to be executed. People say, well, the whole term mass deportation is very cruel, very racist. No, it's not. When you have massive illegal immigration, historic numbers, right? At least 10.5 came to the border in Joe Biden. We know based on immigration court data over the last 10 years, 9 out of 10 will not get asylum. They'll get order removed because they simply don't, qualify for asylum. So there has to be a massive deportation, because if we don't execute the orders of the judge after due process, then what the hell are we doing? You might as well just shut down the immigration court. The process isn't working. Take the Border Patrol off the border because there's no consequences. So there has to be a big deportation operation, but we're doing it in a smart way.
Let me play devil's advocate for a minute. They're here. Why not just find a way to fold them into American society? Why not just find a way to embrace them and make them part of America? We say we need immigrants. We've got immigrants. Why this big push to arrest these people and get them out of the country?
Well, for a couple reasons. Number one, there are millions of people standing in line, taking their tests, doing their background investigations, paying the fees to be part of the greatest nation on earth. They're doing things the right way. They're sitting in the back seat while millions of people came to the border and cheated the system. They cheated the system. 9 out of 10 people claim asylum at the southern border over the last decade. The cartels teach them what to say and what to claim. They come make that claim, get released. They get ordered, move, and never leave. If the message we want to send to the whole world is enter the country illegally, which is a crime, make a false asylum claim, lose your case, but you get to stay. No one's looking for you. You're never going to solve this problem. And with at least 10.5 million people come to the border, Border Patrol is overwhelmed. 70% of agents were off the line on any given day, by average. 70%. Sometimes in several different districts or AORs, there was no Border Patrol agents on patrol. El Paso, Del Rio, Eagle Pass. So there was days where every single uniform was pulled off the line for days dealing with this humanitarian crisis. And what happened during that time? This Border Patrol wasn't on the line doing the national security job. They're too busy changing diapers, making baby formula, making hospital runs, taking care of the humanitarian crisis. Fentanyl came across that killed over 250,000 Americans. Sex trafficking skyrocketed. Number of people on the terrorist watch list went over 400. So you got national security threats coming across that open border. You got drugs coming across that open border. You got women and children being sex trafficked across that open border. So what people say is just harmless illegal immigration, people looking for a better life, there are consequences. There's a whole ugly underbelly. So it's important we have consequences. We can't send a message to the whole world, go ahead and violate the laws. You hide out long if you get to stay. That is a message we can't send to the whole world. And another thing, over 4,000 aliens died making that journey because they knew the border was open. When the most vulnerable people in the world realize you can cross the border illegally, get released, get flown to the city of your choice on the taxpayer dime, get a free hotel room, get 3 meals a day, get free medical care, and on top of all that, get work authorization, which is the real reason they came here. If that's the message we send, we're never going to fix the problem. People can keep dying making that journey. Women and children continue to be sexually assaulted making that journey. It just feeds the beast. So we need to have a secure border. Secure border saves lives. Right now, border crossings, illegal border crossings, down 96%, right? Which 96% less people are coming. How many children aren't dying making that journey? How many women and children aren't being assaulted? How many pounds of fentanyl isn't getting across right now? Fentanyl seizures right now down 50% because of securing the border. So border security doesn't mean an awful lot if you don't have interior enforcement strategy, because those that get by need to be held accountable. You can demand due process, which they did. I have the right to see a judge. I have the right to claim asylum. Yes, you do. And you had your due process at great taxpayer expense, but due process doesn't mean squat if the final decision that due process isn't carried out.
Okay, they go to immigration court and their asylum is denied. What happens to them at that point?
They get ordered removed.
And
many of them do not leave.
when you say they get ordered removed, do they go to an ICE detention center?
No. In the past, the judge would give them, 30, 60 days, get your affairs in order
And leave.
and work with ICE, but they'll disappear in the wind. It's a violation of law. Entering the country legally is a crime. So we're the most giving nation in the world. We welcome more refugees and legal immigration than any world in the country. But there has to be a line. There's a right way and wrong way to come to this country. Every country that has borders has an enforcement strategy. If we don't have borders, then we're not a country.
Despite some post-election optimism, Wall Street is already bracing for a rough rest of 2025. When Warren Buffett starts dumping blue chip stocks and stacking up cash, you've got to ask yourself, what does he see coming? I trust Preserve Gold to safeguard my accounts, and I urge you to do the same. They're the only precious metals company I recommend. When uncertainty is this high, smart people look for stability. That's why physical gold and silver might just be what your finances need. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 to get your free precious metals guide from Preserve Gold. With gold prices recently breaking records and analysts predicting this trend to continue through 2025, you cannot afford to wait. As a bonus, you can get up to $15,000 with a qualified purchase from Preserve Gold. So don't wait. Text Dr. Phil, that's DRPHIL, to 50505 today. So you're saying we're the most giving country in the world?
We give more refugee status than any other country in the world. We welcome more immigrants to this country every year than any other country in the world, by far, not even close. That's why we're asking now, Dr. Phil, that if you're in the country legally, don't wait for us to come find you. Don't go through the process of deportation and a forced removal, because there are statutory bars placed against you by law, anywhere from 5 years to 20 years, sometimes forever, that you can't even come back under a legal program after you've been formally deported. So leave now and get your affairs in order. It's much more humane to get your affairs in order and work with us. We'll get you on a plane. Then we will give you $1,000 once you get to the country. And leave yourself an opportunity to come back through a legal process, whether it's a visitor's visa, a worker's visa, a green card. If you have a U.S. citizen child here that wants to become an adult, can petition for your family member. There's a right way and wrong way to come to this country. We're just telling people you gotta come the right way. There are millions of people trying to do it the right way, and they're being cheated.
So if an illegal immigrant, if someone's in this country illegally, walked up to an ICE agent on the street and said, I'm here illegally and I want to self-deport, would that ICE agent help them do that
Yeah,
and get them a ticket home and $1,000 to get on their feet when they got there?
absolutely. And they can also go to the CBP Home app, and just sign up in there. You know, we already had some leave. I think last count was just under 2,000 left under that program so far. But I think the more and more they see us out there doing these operations, the more and more they'll be convinced that maybe I should leave and try to come back under a worker's visa or another program. It's going to save lives. And cartels are already feeling the effect. Now that the border is the most secure we ever had, cartels are hurting. Now the intelligence reports say they're producing a lot of fentanyl to sell in Europe and Asia because it's so tight here. Look, that's why we're doing things the right way. We're looking for the criminals, national security threats. They're the priority. If there's a criminal here and non-criminal there, we're going to always get the criminal first. You know, those who came here on a visa and overstayed that visa, and they made an agreement. They came here to study. For instance, let's say it's a student visa. Come here to study. We'll give you the greatest education in the world. You get your degree. We allow you to stay here. When your visa's up, it's time to go home. But when you stay past that visa, that's a disjustice. This country, we gave you a great benefit. Play by the rules and go home. Again, you leave here with a great degree. No matter what the degree is, we're always looking for talent to come to this country. President Trump has said for forever, he wants to bring people who are based on merit. But when he did his first immigration policy under Trump 45, even though the policy was based on merit, he still left room for mothers and fathers, daughters and sons, and there was still that family piece there, but it was based on merit. And that's, I think, the direction we're trying to go into now.
Do you think that the people that are critical of this policy just don't believe the hell that these vulnerable people go through at the hands of the cartel? Do you think they don't believe that? Do you think it just is not getting enough exposure? Because we've been down there, we've been to the border, we've spoken to people from the cartels that have given intelligence that say, A, they go into serious debt that their families back home get held accountable for. They are physically, mentally, emotionally, and sexually abused by cartel members as they get here. And then oftentimes they're dumped in very treacherous terrain and areas, sometimes in Arizona, for example, where it can be 120 degrees out in the desert, and they got a 50-pound homemade backpack on their back of drugs that they're meant to carry. And some make it, some don't. It's terrible what they go through to get here. It would seem like people that are so compassionate for these people looking for a better life would be compassionate about the hell they're having to go through at the hands of the cartel and would want to spare them that.
And I don't think they understand it, because they're seeing this person, well, let's say he's working this ranch, he's sending money home to his family, he should stay. Well, the more you send that message, well, you know, they've been here 5 years, she should stay. Then you got all these aliens throughout the world say, well, I can cross the border, I can get ordered removed after I lose my case, I don't have to leave, because if I hide out long enough, I'll get to stay. If I have a U.S. citizen child while I'm here illegally, they'll let me stay. So it just drives more and more illegal immigration, which drives more and more sexual assaults, which drives more and more alien deaths, which drives more and more unsecuring the border, overwhelm the border patrol, that causes all the bad things to happen, like the fentanyl and the people on terrorist watch list. People need to understand it's bigger than just this one guy working this ranch. It's bigger than that. You're feeding the cartel machine that's going to overwhelm the border patrol, because if the message we send the whole world is, hide out long enough, you're okay, they're going to keep coming. They're going to keep dying. They're going to continue to be sexually assaulted. And so we got to, we're a nation of laws. We need to make sure people, you can be a part of the greatest nation on earth, but the first thing you should do is not break our law. Go through it the right way. Go through the right way. And I'll say this. I shared a number with you that nearly 9 out of 10 people who claim asylum end up at order removal. So while they got the system clogged up for 5 or 7 years, 9 years if you're in like New York City, if they exhaust all their appeals, there are thousands upon thousands of people who really do need our protection. They really are escaping fear and persecution from their home government because of race, religion, or political affiliation. They're sitting in the back seat because now the whole court system is swamped.
Because the ones that don't have a real
The
case.
ones that cheated.
This episode is brought to you by masa chips. For decades, chips were fried in tallow until big corporations switched to cheap seed oils. Now, seed oils make up 20% of the average American's daily calories, linked to inflammation and metabolic issues. Masa is bringing back the good stuff with 3 simple ingredients: organic nixtamalized corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. No seed oils, no junk, just a crunchy, sturdy chip that won't break in your guac. Masa Chips is beloved by tens of thousands of customers and has been endorsed by industry-leading health and nutrition experts like Ben Greenfield and Gary Brecka. Ready to give masa a try? Go to masachips.com/merit and use code MERIT for 25% off your first order. That's masachips.com/merit and code MERIT for 25% off your first order. I've had informants from cartels tell me, and border guards and sheriffs along those counties tell me that when we talk about human trafficking, that if you have a 12-year-old girl, for example, that she is worth 10 times her weight in drugs in terms of being sex trafficked, that they make more money off of human trafficking than they do off of drugs. Is that true?
Yes, it is, because it's in perpetuity pretty much. She'll be in forced sex slavery for years and years, and they never pay off their fees. And that is what people need to understand. There's a whole ugly underbelly of this illegal immigration. And it's just terrible what these people go through. And you say, well, they went through it. We should, since they went through it and suffered so much, let's save them and stay here. Then that just sends a message to the whole world. Keep coming, because sooner or later we're going to say, you know what, you're okay. But I really, truly think the Biden administration, they're smart. They're playing the long game. They release millions of people into this country rather than detain them. An ICE bed costs about $127 a night when I was ICE director. So why do they choose to release them to an NGO, put them in a hotel room at $500 a night? You could have did $127 a night in an ICE detention facility. They will still have their 3 meals a day. They get their health checked. They get all the things. Why did they release them? I really think this past administration used the border crisis to bring millions of people in this country because they saw future political benefit from it. Whether they're future political voters, Democratic voters, or whether they, like Joe Biden did, change the rules on the census. So now you got millions of people in sanctuary cities being counted in the next census, which means what? More seats in the House for the Dems. But they saw future political benefit. And the reason they're going crazy right now, Democratic members of Congress, are we hurting their plans? Because we're removing a lot of people, and that's not what they want.
Has this created a cartel slavery society inside America?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They're actually slaves.
There are illegal aliens in this nation being forced into criminal activity to pay off their fees. And they don't have a choice, many of them, because the cartel tell them, we know your family lives. We'll kill them. And they will. So, I can't tell you how many investigations I did in the sex trafficking. When I was in charge of offices in Dallas, we were hitting massage parlors where women were forced into prostitution. They're, and they're being held and had to pay off smuggling fees. That happens across this country every day. There are people working on farms that are paying off smuggling fees. Meatpacking plants paying off smuggling fees. Women forced into prostitution. We just indicted 27 TDA members in New York City that were involved with sex trafficking, gun trafficking, drug trafficking, murder for hire. It was a big RICO investigation. And all these women they were forced into sex slavery were paying off fees. People don't understand that. I think the Biden administration was the most inhumane presidential administration in the history of this nation. They say they're more humane. Trump was inhumane because shutting the border down and increasing interior enforcement operations. No. Like I said before, 96% less people come in, we're saving lives. A secure border saves lives. And that's what upsets me the most. It should be a nonpartisan issue. Everybody should want a secure border. There's no downside on a secure border. Less people die, less drugs get in, less terrorists get in. There's no downside on a secure border. And we bankrupt the cartels, who've killed more Americans than any terrorist organization. There's no downside to secure border. But secure border doesn't mean an awful lot if you don't take care of the people that came in the country illegally and have a consequence for those that either got by the border patrol or were released illegally by the last administration.
All right, let me ask you something. If Congress passes a law that says, we want you to go and find all of the agricultural workers that are working in the fields, and if you don't identify them as violent felons, we want you to issue them a work visa where they can be here during season and then go home, and then during season they can come back and then go home, and they can go back and forth across the border with this visa to see their families or whatever. If they pass that law, what do?
We'd enforce it.
You'd enforce that law?
We follow the law. Sounds like the Becerra program that was in place in the late 70s and early 80s, where someone would come on a work visa and they work a season. Let's say it's strawberry season or grape season, whatever. They come, they work legally with a visa. They didn't swim across the river. They didn't put themselves in the hands of criminal cartels and went to a port of entry. At the end of the season, they go home with their pay, and next season they come back. I mean, the Becerra program was back in the late 70s, early 80s. But, we're going to enforce whatever law Congress enacts, and that's what irritates me a lot, is that you got the Democratic side of the House out there screaming at us out there for enforcing immigration law. Well, ICE isn't making this up. We're enforcing the law that you enacted, that you told us to do, and that you appropriate as money to do, and you're attacking ICE agents. I mean, the hatred and the visceral against ICE agents right now is something I have never seen in my career. There's always been, immigration enforcement has always been controversial, always been. But right now, the hate being pushed out by politicians and activists, to include some judges, is putting ICE officers at great risk.
Okay, but let me get this right. These aren't ICE policies. These are federal laws. So these laws are enacted by Congress. They're signed into law by whoever's president at the time. And then you're given the law and the appropriations to enforce the law. So you're not making the policy, you're not writing the law, and you're not funding its enforcement. You're just hired to do it. So you're enforcing their laws with their appropriations, and they're criticizing you and ICE agents for it with vitriol and hatred that sounds to me like it's calling for violence.
Exactly. Well, I'll go a step further. Legislation creates the law, signed by the president. The judge orders a person removed. We're simply carrying out the orders of not only the legislature, but the judicial. Our job is to make sure that we follow that law, we follow the judge's order, and remove that person. But the hatred is all on ICE because we're the ones out there putting handcuffs on people, right? But I've never seen the hatred I've seen in the last 5 months. I've never seen it like this.
And
it
what
is
form
out
is
of
it
control.
taking? What are you seeing?
We're seeing doxing of agents. We're seeing threats against agents. I deal with it myself, but as the borders are, I'll deal with it because I'm out there in the public face, right? But the men and women who strap a gun to their hip every day, wear that Kevlar vest, kiss their wives or their husband goodbye and go to work, they're in harm's way because they're out there enforcing the law. I got death threats and I got a security team. We can deal with it. But these men were out there on the street trying to enforce the laws that they took an oath to enforce. They're in great danger. And it's just not the open borders left lunatics that show up and protest and throw things at them and threaten their lives. You got members of Congress. You got, Hakeem Jeffries talking about he's going to dox every agent and make sure they're identified because they're wearing masks. They didn't have any problem with everybody wearing masks during COVID. They don't have any problem with the Hamas supporters on college campus wearing masks or BLM wearing masks. That was fine. But ICE agents are wearing masks to protect their identity and their families because they've been doxxed. There's been pictures of ICE agents posted on telephone poles with their phone numbers, home addresses. I know it's happened to me. I had over 1,000 protesters at one of my homes. Again, but on the borders I expect that. the men and women out there doing the job, I cannot believe the hate against these men and women. Because while you and I are sleeping this morning at 3 a.m., we're in bed sleeping, they're out there trying to arrest really bad people and take them off the streets to make America safer. I've never seen anything like it. But hate's just not coming from the nuts anymore, and the open borders advocates. We got to come from people in Congress and even some judges have made some comments during proceedings.
Well, you and I have met some young men that were, because of funding problems, were working alone on trails out in the wilderness in Arizona and confronted multiple aliens sneaking into the country, got attacked, were left for dead, thrown off of an overpass, all different kinds of things. These are brave men and women that are out there fighting. It's not just an analogy that we're home sleeping. They're out there alone in the wilderness, and they're standing up for their country and fighting and being left for dead. You remember we met those young men at that center in Arizona?
And both of them were left for dead.
Yeah.
And I've met many of them. Look, I know what they're going through. I was that guy. I know what it's like to stand on a dirt trail at 3 o'clock in the morning because a sensor went off. Someone tripped the sensor on a dirt trail in the middle of nowhere. The sensor could have 7 or 8 hits. It could be 7 or 8 people coming through. Their nearest backup would be 4 or 5 miles away. They're going to stand in that dirt trail and take on what's coming. It could be just an illegal alien coming for a better life that's going to say, oh, I give up. Or it could be a heavily armed drug smuggler. But these men and women would take it on while we're all sleeping. And they're not making a lot of money doing it, believe me.
No.
None of them are getting rich. But the men and women of ICE right now are taking most of the hate for doing their job, for enforcing the law, for making this country safe again. Look at the damn numbers, and look how many criminals they've taken off the street. I mean, I got a lot of hate for a speech I gave at a CPAC because I said I was going to go to Boston and bring hell with me. What I meant was I was going to go to Boston and find every illegal alien who sexually assaulted a child. And at the time, ICE has picked up 9 of them. 9 people who sexually assaulted a child, raped a child, that they weren't honored to detain or released back to the streets in Massachusetts. So when I said I was going to bring hell, I did. And people went nuts. I can't believe Tom Homan said he's bringing hell to Massachusetts. You're damn right I'm going to. And I would think every decent civilian would say, you know what? Someone that rapes a child should bring hell to them. But this is what the men and women ICE do. They're arresting child predators. They're arresting murderers. They're arresting rapists. I mean, they've arrested some really bad people. You know, you got Congressman Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, they call her, right? She's constantly attacking ICE. She attacks me. I don't care what she says about me. I could care less. But she needs to sit back and say, you know what? ICE is taking a lot of public safety threats out of my community and put their lives at risk doing it. I should thank them. Hakeem Jeffries should be thanking ICE for taking bad guys off the street. But no, it's politics over common sense right now, and I can't believe it. The hate against ICE agents is all-time high, and that's why I appreciate your help. I know you want to tell the story, the facts, about who these men and women are. They're mothers and fathers, too.
They are.
They're not the Gestapo, and I appreciate what you did. You pushed back on some politician lately, comparing them to the Gestapo and the Nazis.
Earlier this week, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz had what I consider to be ignorance and insensitivity in comparing federal immigration agents, ICE, to the Gestapo. Does he even know what he's saying?
These are men and women, American patriots who put their lives on the line to make this country safe again and protect us all. And to compare them to the Nazis, for God's sakes? Racial cleansing, for God's sakes?
That's the most absurd thing. To me, I was offended by that. I think a lot of people were offended by that. You and I were together last night, and people coming up to you, shaking your hand, saying, thank you for what you're doing for America. Those people don't get enough attention. And when we've been out together, I don't think we have been around a group of police officers where every police officer did not go out of their way to come up to you and say thank you. Thank you for what you're doing for America, and pledge their support. Now, the politics of their department, the politics of the mayor, the politics of of that community may not be expressed that way, but those street cops have got your back, they've got ICE's back, they all understand what's going on, and they get it. We're enforcing the law here. We're taking criminals off the street. They get it. The men and women on the street in uniform get it. It's the ivory towers dwellers sitting up there that don't get what's going on. And to me, it sounds like we've got people saying, if you boil it down, we're saying, all right, you ICE agents, damn you for arresting pedophiles, damn you for arresting murderers, damn you for arresting rapists, damn you for protecting these children from the cartel. How dare you do your jobs? That doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how they're peddling that story. I don't get how they're peddling that story.
I don't either. I'm shocked. I'm shocked. But you're exactly, I remember going to Chicago. Every uniform walked up to us.
Yes, sir.
So we know we're doing the right thing for the men and women who are on the front line, too. I mean, they don't want to arrest the same illegal alien pedophile 10 times either. They want to arrest him once, give him to ICE, and remove him not only from the community, but from the country. But I don't get it. I've said 1,000 times in just about every interview I do, whether it's TV or you or anybody else, every elected mayor, every elected city council person, every elected governor, their number one responsibility is protection of their communities and their citizens. Why would you not want ICE removing public safety threats from your community? You should be shoulder to shoulder with us on this. Obviously, there's a hatred for President Trump and myself and this administration, but they're putting politics over public safety. I just wish they would love their community and their citizens more than they hate President Trump. Put your communities first. Put politics aside for a minute. And let us into jail to arrest somebody you locked in a jail cell because he's a public safety threat. When you're done with him, let us have him. It makes it safer for the community. The community's safer because you're not releasing the public safety threat back in the community to reoffend. The community will be safer. The alien will be safer because anything can happen on a street arrest. And the officer's going to be safer. It's common sense. So I'm shocked every morning I get up that I can't believe an elected official is going to say, I don't want ICE in my community arresting public safety.
Is anybody else pushing back on these politicians that are doxing ICE agents, that are calling them the Gestapo, that are just rewriting reality? Is anybody else pushing back on them?
Now they are. Just recently, we're prosecuting those people. I met with the U.S. Attorney today, who's doing a prosecution of some doxing that happened here. Pam Bondi, we got a strong Attorney General now, so she's put a word out to all the U.S. attorneys. You know, these agents are in an already dangerous job, and putting them and their families at greater risk by this doxing is unacceptable. So prosecutions are happening. Matter of fact, there's been new guidance just go out to all the field offices. We will not tolerate it. If you dox, you'll be held accountable. If you put hands on an ICE officer, you're gonna be held accountable. If you impede an ICE officer, you're gonna be held accountable. There's no gray area here. You step over the line, you're gonna be prosecuted.
Your fear is something's going to happen here. That
My
there's going
fear
to be a
is the hate.
confrontation, and somebody's going to
The
get
visual,
taken out.
so the hate is so big right now because of the false stories being pushed out there about ICE agents. I fear that either ICE is going to take a life, or one of them are going to lose their life. I've seen some videos lately that are just scary. For someone that's done this for a long time, I'm scared for the officer, I'm scared for the public. It's out of control. And we're not going to tolerate it. And it only takes one incident. And I fear it's going to happen, yes.
What do we do when we've got people, what's happening with, you say, Hakeem Jeffries, you've got Governor Walz, you've got people that are in positions of authority that are contradicting the law and misreporting what is actually happening. What is being done to get that under control?
Hopefully, I press Department of Justice, I've been pressing them. When do they cross that line between free speech and threats? When do they cross that line of impeding? When do they cross that line in harboring, concealing an illegal alien? When do they cross that line and interfering with proceeding? There are 6 or 7 federal statutes that I think I've asked DOJ, please look at this and you tell me when they cross that line. Calling ICE Hitler, they cross the line? Probably not. But when you start doxing ICE agents, or you threaten to dox ICE agents as a member of Congress, or you're educating illegal aliens how to evade law enforcement, I think you cross the line. I'm waiting for DOJ to decide, and I'm sure, I know they're doing it because we've thrown a lot of cases at them. We need to send clear guidance out to the entire public. You cross that line, you're going to be prosecuted, but they need to know where that line is. So that's why I've asked DOJ for the review.
But right now, your focus is to carry out the law as they exist and improve public safety for every community an ICE agent goes into. You can carry out the law and improve public safety.
Exactly, and we're not looking for confrontation. That's why we're saying use the CBP home app. Work with us. Rather than find you on the street and handcuffing you and putting you in the car and detaining you, go to CBP home app. Go to an ICE office. Work with us. And do it the right way. It's much more humane.
Yeah, you'd much prefer that.
It was for that. We're not looking for confrontations. And like I said, the videos I see every day now, it's on the edge. It's a matter of time if it's not addressed now.
And the public that understands, the public that does critical thinking and thinks their way through this and says, okay, what is actually happening here? What are these men and women doing? They're doing their job, and they would be fired if they weren't doing their job. If they were just laying about, if they were taking their money as an ICE agent and they were just sitting on a corner watching all these people go by that were, this one's a rapist, this one's a drug dealer, and they weren't doing anything about it, they'd be squawking that, why are we paying these people? They're not doing their job.
Well, I think the public just needs to understand there's millions of people doing things the right way.
Yeah.
I met a man from an African nation in New York City. I called for ground transport, and he recognized me. So he started telling me a story. He came to this country as a student, later got a green card, then became a citizen. He has a wife and 3 boys. He's been trying to get over here for 4 or 5 years. And he shared with me, because he watched the TV, this is under the Biden administration now. He said, I watch TV and I see all these people coming across being released and getting work authorization and getting a free hotel room. He goes, I wake up some morning and say, why don't I do that? And I get my family here right now. He goes, but Mr. Homan, I became a citizen of this country because I love this country. And I will not violate the laws of the country that's been so good to me. I wish people can talk to folks like him that are trying to do things the right way.
You had a man come up to you last night and said that his parents came over and they came in the right way, and then they became citizens, and then he went through the process, and they're so proud when they do it, and it's interesting, the pride when they do it the right way.
Our biggest supporters are legal immigrants.
Yeah. Let's talk Border Patrol. What percentage of Border Patrol officers are Hispanic?
Over half.
Over half?
Over half.
Over half of Border Patrol are actually Hispanic.
Yes.
But they're supposed to be monsters.
Supposed to be racist.
Yeah. Now, these are the guys that I've seen go into the water, into the river, and swim out to save a child that's caught up in the current and swim them back to shore, put their lives in danger to save a child that somebody had just put into the water to try to get across the river. And they go into the water to go over there and try to save their lives to get them back. They put their own lives at risk.
Border Patrol saves thousands of lives every year.
Yeah.
No one talks about that. Border Patrol agents, when the families were coming across in big numbers, Border Patrol agents would bring toys from their own kids to the station so the kids had something to do while they were waiting for the processing. Border Patrol agents shared lunches. I myself, back in the early 80s, many times I didn't eat my lunch. I'd arrest an illegal alien hasn't eaten for a few days, I'd give my lunch to him. Not that I'm some superhero, but some of these people are in bad shape when you find them. Border Patrol agents do that every day. They share their lunch. They bring toys from their kids. They take sicknesses home to their families, whether it's TB, measles, chickenpox, whatever. I don't know how many times when I was Border Patrol agent, you got to get the TB skin test because you encounter somebody with TB. So these men and women, like I say, and I'll say this again, under Biden administration, I think the number was like 42, if I got that right. 42 CBP officers committed suicide. They had the highest percentage of suicides of any state, local, or federal law enforcement agency. Why? Now, you know this area better than I do, but my opinion is whatever struggles they were going through, giving CPR to a baby, pulling dead people out of the river, talking to little girls that were raped multiple times, certainly had a weigh on them in addition to whatever internal struggles they were having. There has to be a correlation from the tragedies they dealt with every day and the high percentage of suicides. I'll defer to you on that because I'm not an expert. I got to think that's got to have some sort of effect.
Well, you're exactly right. And I've talked to those men and women, and the raw human suffering that they have to see every day and the stories that they have to deal with is a burden. And it's hard. You can't compartmentalize that. It stays with you. It stays with you time and time again.
But thanks to President Trump, they're seeing a lot less of it.
Now, we don't know what's happening back at home.
What we don't have, what's happening are the victims of sex trafficking and forced labor that are here in the United States that we're trying to find. We don't know what's happening to the 300,000 children that we're trying to find. And we've already located just under 9,000. Some were perfectly fine. Some weren't. So President Trump's committed to finding every one of these kids that the last administration lost, to find it, because we know some are in forced sex trafficking, we know some in forced labor. We're already found some in both. We got to rescue these kids. So the tragedy that used to happen on the border, now we got to address the tragedy that's happening every day in this country, in some city, someplace, to a young child.
You need to rescue these children, not arrest these children, because the idea is to rescue them from this hell they're in. And when they are rescued, there are people standing by to give them medical help and support, psychological, sociological, every kind of support they need to try to give them a second chance at life. So you're not just going in and snapping them up and trying to find somewhere to send them off. There are resources waiting to help these children to try to erase some of the hell they've been through. And that's going to be a long dig out, but it will start with ICE.
We'll rescue the kids and prosecute the trafficker.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got to find these kids. President Trump's committed to it. We're working hard at it. And like I said, we already found, I think, right on 8,000. We got a lot more to do.
Yeah. And you and the president and I talked about that the last time the three of us were together, focusing on rescuing these children. And I hope every person that is engaged with ICE listens to this conversation and knows how hard you're fighting for them and how hard President Trump is fighting for them, so they don't feel like they're out there alone and unappreciated, because they are not. I hear it every time. People come up to me all the time and say, thank you for telling ICE this story. When you and I are together, they come up and thank you for it. And I hope all of the ICE agents, every man and woman, whether on the street or behind a desk or whatever, I hope they hear this conversation to know how hard you and President Trump are fighting for them to do the job they've been hired to do and enforce the laws they've been hired to enforce. I hope they all hear it.
I hope so too, because these are good men and women. They, they go home at the end of every shift, taking terrible things they deal with home with them. And when you're out arresting a child predator and you got 40 protesters spitting on you, throwing you things, threatening you and your family, I wish these protesters put themselves in their shoes just for a minute.
I tell you, I wish a judge would have one of these protesters just go with one of those ICE agents and spend a week with them, go home with them, go out to work with them, go home with them, go out to work with them. I bet you not one of them would maintain the position they had when they started. They'd go, wow, this is a real human being with a real heart doing a really hard job for some vulnerable people.
You know, there's this thought that these guys are just heartless. I'm telling you, these men and women at ICE, they don't hang their heart on a hook when they leave the house to go to work.
No.
They take it with them. I've seen it in action, and I know many of them deal with the tragedies they see every day. And there's a reason that divorce is so high in law enforcement.
Yeah.
There's a reason suicides are so high in law enforcement. They got a tough job.
It's a high price.
So,
to pay.
you know, if you see an ICE agent, thank them, because they're making the country safe again.
Hey, Dr. Phil here. My network, Merit TV, has it all.
Now, let me blow your mind.
Merit TV's got the news that matters.
The selection of a new pope.
Entertainment you crave.
Busted.
Everybody in a good mood today?
And live events.
Surprise.
What am I, chopped liver?
With serious punch.
Big shot.
Go to merittv.com and download the Merit TV app today.